Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming, and welcome to the Tiverton Taxpayers Association Candidate Forum. And in the town of Tiverton on July 18th, we're going to have an election for a Charter Review Commission. And that commission is a nonpartisan commission who will have 9 members. And so we hope that everyone can get out and vote in that. And the Tiverton Taxpayers Association is hosting this candidate forum tonight with the hopes that the voters of Tiverton can learn more about the issues and also about the candidates. So thank you everyone for coming. I'd like to give a special thank you to Country View Estates up here on Hearst Lane in the, I guess it would be the northeast corner of town. Country View, as some of you may know, has a rich history in this sort of thing in the town, and for about a decade now. So we certainly appreciate being here, and certainly always nice to come back. I'd like to specifically say congratulations to Mr. Joe Cleary, who's here tonight, who just won an election here to be the president of the Homeowners Association. So congratulations, Joe. And I'd like to specifically thank 2 of our hosts. The first one is Michael Papadimitriou. I think I got it right. Michael, you will recognize because he works our polls, and so he's the tall guy with the mustache at the polls. And thank you for doing that, Michael. And I'd also like to thank Tom Morse, who is also a resident here. Where's Tom? There he is. Yeah, so I first found out who Tom Morse was back in 2008 at a financial town meeting when he found himself at the microphone telling the people he liked to have steak once in a while. And to this day, I remember that video clip. So thanks, Tom, for having us. And we have one distinguished guest tonight who I'd like to recognize. We have Joan Quick here. Where is she? There she is. Joan is the former state rep for District 94, and that covered, at the time, all of Little Compton and parts of Portsmouth and parts of Tiverton as well. So thank you for being here. So that all being said, I'll also mention that the hall we're in tonight here at Country View is in fact one of the polling places. I did want to mention that. The Country View is one of the polling places, so that seems appropriate. The candidate forum, we have a pretty simple set of rules. We're not very strict in this. First of all, it's important that everybody know that all 24 candidates that are currently still in the race were invited tonight to participate in this, and we have a healthy turnout, so we're very happy about that. That's important for everyone to know. Secondly, while we're up here tonight, we're not soliciting votes, either personally or for any organization. That's important to know. And we're also not soliciting or asking for any money, and again, personally or for any organization. We're just saying that each speaker gets about 5 to 7 minutes to speak, and we don't intend to enforce that very strictly, but we just need to also keep the night moving. And the last rule is to have fun. So to all the candidates, make sure you have fun. With that, I'd like to make the first introduction for a candidate, and that is Mr. Richard Rahm. Now, Mr. Rahm, I met last summer when he was riding his bicycle around Tiverton with lawn signs propped up on it. And I since understand now he has a motor scooter to do that. But he ran for Senate seat in District 12 last November and put up a really good fight. So with that, I will introduce Mr. Richard Rahm, who is our first speaker tonight, who is a candidate for the Charter Review Commission.
Thank you, Jeff. When I ran for Senate, I did a lot of door-to-door work, and I always told people that would talk to me, I like to see power and authority move down to the individual. I don't want to see it in government. It has to be, some of it has to be in government. But the more you can push down to the individual, the better off we all are. The financial town referendum, that is a pure democracy. Not only is it a pure democracy, it allows other citizens of our town to come up with their own budget. Get people to vote for it. Sell it to people. A democracy. And I see our opposition and I think, why would you want to change something like that? It just makes no sense. When every voter has the power of the purse strings, and that's a lot of power. Right? The Tiverton Taxpayers Association, they like to point to the chart and show, oh yeah, it's reduced your taxes, and indeed it has. And I like that. I'm not saying I'm against that. I like that a lot. Right? But what I like most is the people of Tiverton did that. Right? Now, the opposition who may want more money for the schools or the police or whatever project they have, they can also use the FTR to get whatever they want. They just have to sell it. They have to sell it to every taxpayer in Tiverton, because that's a democracy. And if you can do that, more power to you. I've talked to 3 or 4 people that want to take the casino money and use it to pay down debt. Fabulous idea. You know what? Put your budget together. Get yourself a petition. Let's vote on it. And you sell me your idea that paying down debt is a good idea. I personally think it is a good idea, right? But there's 4,000 other Tiverton voters that need to weigh in on it, right? And that's why I'm running for the commission. I want to protect the FTR. I think it's fabulous, just the way it is. When I went door to door, and I spoke to people about the casino, some were for, some were against it. The guys that were for it, they never said to me once, I want to take that money and buy, 20 new police cars and a bunch of new fire engines and blah, blah, blah. No, they want their taxes lowered. Right here, right? So you take all that money from the casino and you allow the FTR to run its process. Maybe it won't work. Maybe the townspeople are going to say, no, we want those fire engines. We want those police cars. We want more textbooks. So our taxes will go up. But that's the citizen's choice, and that's important. And that's what I want to protect, the citizen's choice. And the FTR is the democracy that does that. I have a couple of other pet peeves that I just sometimes find it astonishing that people, citizens, voters, sometimes don't always understand what a bond referendum means. It seems like we're always voting them in. I would like to see a different process where the citizens become educated, more involved in how a bond referendum gets passed. I think it's far too easy for a lot of citizens just to vote for that bond referendum because they think, state's going to pay for half of it. Well, guess what? We're all state citizens here, and every other town is doing the exact same thing. Yeah, they're all voting in their bond referendums thinking, half off. Well, it isn't, right? We all pay for that in state taxes. So I'd like to explore some avenues to educate our voters about bond referendums. We have a huge financial burden due to bond payments that we've incurred lately. So I appreciate every one of you for coming out and listening to why I want to run for the town charter, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Richard. My name is Rob Coulter. I'll be speaking later, but right now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce Nancy Driggs, who will be coming up here shortly. Talk about having a little fun here. Nancy she's an attorney, so we can make fun of attorneys, but she's actually quite which is a good thing to have a friend of the taxpayer, I have to say, that knows the ins and outs of the law and everything that comes into that, especially as we're drafting a charter. But Nancy is on the budget committee right now, and she was a co-chair of the FTMCAC, which is a long acronym for really the official body which led to the financial town referendum that we have today. So it's hard to think of anybody that knows the ins and outs any better than Nancy, and she's also quite an accomplished, serious amateur photographer now. I'm pretty excited to see her work in town hall. Maybe you have too. So my pleasure to introduce Nancy Driggs to you.
Thank you, Rob. You're probably going to be hearing a lot of similar themes here tonight. I was a member of the Change Advisory Committee that the town council appointed to look into changing how we did our budgeting in Tiverton. And back in 2011, I think it's important to remember this because it does get back to Richard, what he was talking about. The people voted 2-1 to change from the financial town meeting to the financial town referendum, which, as we all know, includes the elector petition provision that allows anybody with the requirement of 50 signatures to put an alternate budget and make their argument to the taxpayers for that budget to win. I'm in my third year of being on a 4-year term for the budget committee, and actually we had a very exciting this year on the budget committee because there were sort of 5 of us who have similar feelings about the budget and how it should be, but you need 6 to get a majority. It's 11 people. So we were very persuasive, and there were a lot of hardworking people on the committee, and we ended up passing by at least a majority, but in many cases with more than a majority, a budget committee budget that was 0.5% tax levy increase, which is just astounding that this has happened. And I have to tell you, I was personally aware, and I think others on the budget committee were, that the very existence that the taxpayers knew there was this potential of an elector petition, somebody coming forward with an alternate budget. I think we all noticed, whether it was from the various department heads coming up with their request or the budget committee in its consideration of their recommendations, that the pencils were really sharpened this year, and there really was an effort. I can't tell you how many times I heard from town council members, I think even some school committee, the taxpayers have spoken, they want the taxes lowered. And I think they were listened to this year by the budget committee. So, why am I running for the Charter Review Commission? I have 1 more year on the budget committee. And I guess the short answer is there were sort of a series of 2 alarms that went off. The first happened actually when I was away last summer in August on vacation in Maine, and Jeffrey sent me an email, and one of the candidates running, who was a former town council, was actually attempting to get put before the voter a provision that would have done 2 things to the elector petition. It would have required, rather than 50 votes to get on the ballot, over 1,000 votes in a week. I mean, that's more than you need to run for the state rep. And the other thing, it was attempting to put in a limit on how far the elector petition could differ from what the budget committee recommendation was in any given year. So it was really constricting and neutering the elector petition. It did not see its way to the ballot. However, there are a lot of people, and I think that's why you're hearing a lot of emphasis now, of wanting to protect the FTR, because there is definitely the sense that out of a lot of the 24 candidates who are running, there are many who would very much like to neuter and change the taxpayers' right. And I really like the way Richard put it, because it is impressive to see what happened to the tax levy increases once the FTR came in. But I think we too easily forget those are the taxpayers speaking. I mean, this is your fellow citizens saying we want lower taxes, and they deserve to be listened to. The other alarm that went off for me had to do with the casino revenues, and I don't know how many are aware, but the town council had formed a casino subcommittee. And we noticed so in November, when the casino vote passed in Tiverton, on the December agenda, there was this, for the town council, there was an item where they wanted to do two things. The first was they were planning to change the mission statement of this subcommittee that was already formed. And the mission statement, when formed, mostly had to do with zoning issues or looking at the host agreement, advising the town council in those matters. But all of a sudden, the minute the town voted in the casino, there was an amendment being offered to add a sentence to the mission statement of this casino subcommittee, and that was to develop a plan to allocate the gaming revenues from the casino. And Jeff called me, and I mean, we just went, what? So we went before them, and the first thing they were trying to do was to orchestrate the members of this committee, and it was going to include some budget committee members, and that just wasn't, we got that knocked out, because you can't serve on a subcommittee and be a member of the budget committee, and I think they were just trying to get some cover. The language was allowed to stay, and the town solicitor made a ruling that the charter was not clear, that the revenue section, which clearly delineates what money goes into forming the budget committee docket, et cetera, included the gaming revenues. So I think that's a very important thing we need to, in reviewing the charter, we need to make sure that that gaming revenue is clearly spelled out in the charter, that it goes in the general fund and through the general fund into the normal FTR budgeting process, so that once again the taxpayers get to choose how this revenue, and I agree with Richard, I've spoken to so many people, and the reason they voted for the casino, most of them, is with the thought that it was going to reduce their taxes. And if they thought that this money was somehow going to end up in a side slush fund, or just going without the voters getting to choose, I think it would be very disturbing to them. And this chart actually shows if the huge effect of the casino revenues, if you get what you think you're going to get, which who knows, but I mean, it could have a huge impact on lowering your taxes. So those are the two reasons I chose to run for the Charter Review Commission. I will say that a third reason is I really enjoyed it when Jeff asked me to co-chair the Changes Advisory Commission. We had a good time, and it was a fun project. I mean, I am a lawyer, and I enjoy working with words, and we spent a lot of time getting public input, both from department heads and from the public, into suggestions for what people might want to see as a change. And then we made our recommendation to the town council, and they put it on the ballot, and it did win. But one of the other things I remember distinctly experiencing, and I think it helps to be a lawyer in this regard, it was amazing to me how many times if you changed one sentence in one part of the charter, how you really had to be careful to scan the charter to see what other provisions you might inadvertently have messed up or dealt with, and had to, you just had to be aware of the whole charter. So it was fun, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. Thank you. I apologize. I would now like to introduce Stephen Clark, who has been a Tiverton resident for 10 years. He is a new neighbor, actually, of mine on the street we live on. And I actually met Steve a little accidentally because I had first met his wife, Diane, and thought she might be interested in running for this commission, and tried to pigeonhole her, and no, 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 no. But Steve said yes, 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 yes. So here he is, and he's an engineer, and he'll tell you why he's running, but it's great to have him. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you all for coming tonight. My name is Steve Clark, and I'm running for one of the 9 seats on the CRC Charter Review Commission. My background, I moved down from Massachusetts about 24 years ago, and yeah, they managed to shake that nickname after a while, partly because of Proposition 2.5, I guess. But my wife and I moved down here to Portsmouth, and we were in Portsmouth for 12 years. We went to Portsmouth first because we had young children then, and we were very interested in the quality of the school system. And at that time, Portsmouth had a very highly rated school system, so the school system is very important. And for the last 12 years, we've been in Tiverton. By profession, I'm a mechanical engineer. I worked the last 24 years for a company that develops medical devices. I retired a year ago. So now I have all this time on my hands, and I don't know what to do with it. So I'm going to get involved in politics. So why am I running? Well, I live in Tiverton, as I told you, and I love Tiverton, but it's an expensive place to live. A couple of cases in point. I've bought and sold a couple of houses in Rhode Island over the past years. A year ago, I sold my house in Tiverton. I had been in that house for 10 years. It was a $500,000 house, roughly, and I lost $100,000 on that house. And we put a lot of money into it, too. I mean, it was well maintained. Why is that? House values, property values are, closely tied to taxes. And Tiverton, of course, is known for a town that has high taxes, and that affects property values. Another case in point, as we were looking around, we noticed that a $500,000 house in Tiverton, if you picked it up and moved it across the line to Little Compton, was all of a sudden a $600,000 house. Again, some of that is taxes. There could be other factors, but I think a large part of it is taxes. So, because of those experiences, I want to get involved. I don't want to sit on the sidelines anymore. And I want to understand how the process works and have a voice in it. So how can I be an effective candidate? I've told you I've been in Tiverton for 12 years. Some people would think that's not much. And I haven't been in any political positions before. So what can I do for you? Well, I want to steal a line from the movie Avatar. How many people here have seen that movie? Not a lot. Okay, so I'll try and explain that briefly. Basically, it's a movie in the future. Human beings have gone to another planet and they're going to mine it for some precious mineral. And this main character has to get with the natives there and convince them to, give up the rights to their planet so they can mine it. So, of course, being Hollywood, he starts his love affair with one of the natives. And very early on, this native girl looks at him and says, "You don't know anything about us. You're stupid. You're an empty cup." And he very thoughtfully looked at her and said, "Perhaps you can fill my cup." So that's me in a sense. I'm new to this. I'm an empty cup. And that's a good thing. because I can learn from all of you. I want to fill my cup. I'm all ears. I want to represent you at the Charter Review Commission and possibly beyond. So, because I will be, representing the voters, what I pledge to do, based on the input that I've already gotten over the last few months that I've been involved in this process, I pledge that I will update the charter as needed to improve it or make it more explicit, particularly in the areas of the FTR process, which has proven to be very successful, as illustrated here, and also to make sure that the revenue from the casino goes into the general fund where it can be controlled by the FTR process. That's my pledge to you. Thank you for your time. And now I would like to introduce John Perkins. You didn't see the movie, did you? What? You didn't see the movie, did you? I did not. Oh, really good movie.
Well, I hope I have more than a half-full cup. I'm John Perkins, and my wife Nancy and I have been residents in Tiverton going back into the last century. 1999, we became residents here, first on Main Road and later down near Four Corners. And interestingly, as I was looking at this chart sort of fits right into our time in Tiverton. 1999 is just about over here. And in the first couple of years, we were no different than any other town. Somehow, we started working into this ever precipitous climb, precipitous is the wrong word, but a climb to the biggest castle in the area in terms of taxation. You probably can't see it out there, but some of these are as much as 10% in a bloody year. And then it levels out when we start seeing the FTR. There are a lot of pieces to all of this, and I guess the easiest thing for me to do is to say that I am truly running with the spirit of it, this being a Charter Review Commission and not a Charter Revision Commission. Yes, and I don't know because I don't live in the world of some of the previous speakers that have been thoroughly involved. My involvement has become more out of feeling a need to become sort of involved. But we have to do something about this. We already are doing something about this. But there's a bigger story that I'd like to talk about here. And that is that, well, there's a certain piece of history. There's always a, things have to level out all along. And you can't have a town that is going to continue to be truly viable, servicing its community, fair to the members of the community, that is having a real estate tax that is damn near, if not more, depending on which year you look at, 20% higher than any town around. It's just plain, especially if you kept on playing this game, think where we'd be. Which gets back to the Charter Review Commission. Yes, just as Steve said a minute ago, there are certain advantages of not being thoroughly in the weeds. Maybe I'll be more willing to, or more open to looking at whatever. But the bottom line is, this is a review commission. I firmly believe we got to make sure that this FTR, which has, some people would say it was a miracle, but it's not really. It's just a matter of our democracy working, being allowed to work. And then beyond that, it gets into this casino, which, whether you voted for it or not, like so many things in politics today, it's close to a 50-50 thing as to who did and who didn't. But I don't think there are many people around that really, now that we voted for it, want it to do anything other than to start to correct the situation. And I haven't done the math, but I doubt that even with this full measure being applied, that you've gotten to the point where you've had more than a 10% effect on this whole picture. And we've got a 20% gulf at the moment. So I don't want to starve the town of services. I want the town to get a little smarter, and I hope there's plenty of room for the town to get smarter, to become a stronger town with better services, and we really change this picture. And if we have people who are not focused on trying to mute, eliminate, change for the past, which is this, we have a good chance. And I think I'll leave it at that, and I thank you.
I promise I'm not going to rebut my husband. I am here because of a member who couldn't be here tonight, Justin LaCroix. Couldn't be here tonight due to prior family commitments, but he wanted us to read this statement from him, so I will do that. Justin LaCroix is a married father of 4 young children and a U.S. Navy war veteran who selflessly served our country in the Middle East. Since his honorable discharge from military service in 2013, he has worked as a full-time medical laboratory scientist at St. Anne's Hospital in Fall River, Mass. Justin would like to bring much-needed common sense to the Charter Review Committee to ensure the language within the charter continues to reflect the best interests of the residents of Tiverton. Since 2012, when enacted with the town charter, the FTR is working to lower our taxes in Tiverton while allowing we, the taxpayers, a direct say in how revenue generated is spent responsibly. Some may claim that the FTR is a, quote, source of strife in Tiverton and we should just get along, close quote. But it is more than just being amicable with one another. The FTR is not a source of strife. Rather, it is a strength in sensibility for a town ravaged by uncontrolled spending and high taxes. Furthermore, the FTR will ensure that casino revenue generated is protected and will not be diverted away into side accounts and slush funds. A majority of residents supported the casino with the understanding that direct tax relief would be on the way. Those who opposed the casino build now suddenly have plans on how to allocate funding outside of the scrutiny of the Budget Committee. If new spending is on the horizon, then the FTR ensures that taxpayers have the ultimate say on what services our hard-earned tax dollars will provide. Lastly, any proposal to, quote, streamline the process in local government by eliminating the Budget Committee is short-sighted and reckless. The Budget Committee is crucial to ensuring that the Town Council remains in check, as they have proven lately that checks are needed as indicated by an improperly submitted elector petition. The bottom line is the FTR is working to alleviate abuse of our tax dollars, bringing tax relief. When taxes increase uncontrollably, it is the difference between paying a bill and not being able to afford paying for that same bill. Protect the town charter, protect the FDR, and protect the casino revenue from the threat of radical change. Thank you and God bless. And that's from
Hello, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. And I'll just tell a little tale of how I met this person. If I have my memory correct, I met him in Las Vegas. And so we're at the National Ski Show out there. And so in this case, we left Las Vegas, and here we are back in Tiverton where we both live. So the candidate is Ray Fougere, and he has had a business in Tiverton for 19 years. And he's lived in Tiverton for 9 years. And so Ray's here tonight, and I'll tell a part two of that story. This past winter, just before the holiday, my son and I invited Ray and one of his helpers up to go skiing in Vermont. And so after a great day of skiing and a good night's sleep, I proceeded to make eggs, pancakes, bacon. We had a wonderful breakfast. And then I looked at Ray across the breakfast table and said, Ray, I got to ask a favor of you. Will you run for Charter Review Commission? Anyway, it was kind of a joke initially. But I got a phone call 5 days later, out of the blue, and Ray said, I'll do it. So here we are. I'd like to introduce Ray Fougere, one of our great town members. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeff, for that great introduction. It was exactly like that, too. Exactly like that. And it took me 5 days, actually, to say, well, yeah, Tiverton, that's home. All right, well, I really haven't done anything yet for Tiverton. And I've had a business here for 19 years. And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I said, well, yeah, okay, I'll do it. And that's why I'm running. Also, the background of everything every other candidate said today, ditto. And I'm not into town politics like a lot of other people here, the other candidates are. But everything they say is I just go along with, so to speak. I'm all for the New England town meeting type thing. I lived in Vermont for 17 years, and once a year we used to go down to the town meeting, and it was different than the town meeting here in the high schools. And everything would be brought up, and everybody would vote on it, and everybody would have their say, and this, that, and whatnot, and then everybody would go home. And well, of course, it's a little more sparsely populated there, but everybody was happy because everybody got to vote on it. And you didn't like that new road. Well, I didn't like that thing that you said, and you didn't like this, and we didn't like that. But hey, that's okay. We voted on it. Everybody thought it my way. Everybody thought it your way. That's the way we do it. FTR. That's what that is. Everybody, the whole town gets to vote. Unfortunately, we can't go into the auditorium because we know what happens, but it's essentially the same thing. And any citizen can just have their own, citizen committee can have their own budget. They don't have to take what gets forced into them. So I think that's a perfect thing, and I plan to defend it as much as I can. I also feel that on the other side of the coin, there's only one reason we need to have taxes, and that's because we have to spend money. We can't get around that. There's no question. You need fire, you need police, you need roads, you need everything. But I, being an engineer and a businessman, and the engineers in here will certainly go along with this, efficiency is key. It's how you spend your money. Okay? Do you spend your money on extravagant things and buy 2 of them, or not so extravagant and buy 10 of them? And do you say, when you go to buy something, do you say, how much does it cost? And whatever the person says, you say, okay. Or do you say, look, we're trying to do this in our town. Can you help us out? And we need a little bit of working here, and so forth and so on. So there's always a little bit of give and take. And efficiency in spending money is really, really, really important. Ask any businessman. It's just, there's the roads, there's the schools, there's the whatever other committees, and I'm not that familiar with town governments, but I like to see both sides because I don't like driving on a bumpy road. You know, if my house burns down, I want the fire company there. You know, if there's a burglar in my house, I want the police guys there. You know, and I'm willing to pay for it. I don't want to overpay for it. That's the point. That's the point. And I think through this FTR, controlling the taxes will make the people on those other budget committees maybe sharpen their pencils, like Nancy says, and be a little bit more efficient with our money. And that to me is important. You know, there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's an easy way, there's a hard way, and there's everywhere in between. And so that's my position, and that's what I'm sticking to. And I want to thank everybody for listening, and welcome, and I'm glad you're here. I was gonna, Nancy, I can't help this. I can't help myself. I have to tell a joke about you. Nancy's she's an attorney. And there was once the Pope, the President, and an attorney sailing down the coast. Shark-infested waters. And the boat starts to sink. And the Pope goes, somebody has to swim to shore to get help. The Pope goes, I'll go. I've got the blessed man here, and I'll go, and if I make it, I know I'll get to heaven. If I don't make it, and so if I, no, says the President. I'm the President, and you know, it's really incumbent upon me because I'm a public servant, et cetera, et cetera. I'll just go, I'll go. And the lawyer comes along and goes, hey, listen, you guys, no, I'll do it. I'll make it. But there's sharks. You'll get eaten up. They go, no, they won't bother me. Well, why won't they bother you? Professional courtesy. And we need a shark. And believe me, this lady is sharp. This lady is sharp. We need a shark on this committee.
What Ray doesn't know is the big thing that happened in my life this year. I now have the Pope and the law degree. Anyway, I am here to introduce the next speaker, Donna Cook, who's a very wonderful friend, probably the most commonsensical person you could ever hope to meet. She's great. She has lived in Tiverton 35 years. She's raised 3 children here. 3 years ago, she joined me in deciding to run for the Budget Committee, and we both got on, and the first 2 years was a 8-3. We lost every time with Maggie. And then, so she is still on the Budget Committee, but she did decide to run for town council last year, and I'd like you to know she just lost by 40 votes to Denise DeMedeiros. So Donna is obviously well known and respected in town, and she's wonderful. So here she is.
Good evening. Thank you for coming. I got involved in politics because I was kind of like everybody else. I was kind of angry the way I saw things going on, and I could sit by the sidelines and complain, and it doesn't really do anything. You can sit there and complain. So I decided to do a charter complaint, and that caused an uproar. And then I decided that I liked being able to try to make a difference in the town. I also was subjected to the taxes going up so quickly and feeling helpless as to what to do. And I found that the FTR was a wonderful tool for the taxpayer to use when elected officials were not listening. There was no reason to listen. There was nothing to stop them. There was nothing where they had to look over their shoulder and make sure that they were paying attention. They do pay attention now because the power of the FTR was given through the charter to the people to speak and vote and say and make them pay attention that it's not all right to keep taxing the way it was going. It definitely tells you that it's a wonderful tool because, as you can see, it has stopped it in its tracks to something that, yes, you do have to pay for services in the town of Tiverton. But what's reasonable? Is it reasonable that every year when you get your taxes before the FTR, you are actually afraid to open the tax bill? Afraid that you might be priced out of town? I think the FTR has given power to the people to say, I don't want to be priced out of town. But it's not just seniors that are asking these questions. You also need to ask yourself, am I pricing my grandchildren out of town? Am I pricing my children out of town? And I think you are. And also, your wealth is being redistributed to everyone, and you're losing your wealth. You're losing it in your home. You try to sell your home, you're losing 15% because the take back is that the taxes are so high that you have to give almost 15% back. And it is a tax. It's an added tax that you have to pay because you have to take that off your home to sell it. And I think as an asset, you're losing value in your asset. And you have to think about that. And that has given you the power of the FTR to try to take back some of your wealth that you're distributing around town. And also, I find a lot of people are writing that there needs to be compromise. What does that mean? And divisiveness. And I thought about that, and I'm like, what does that really mean? Does it mean that for compromise and not to be divisive, that I'm supposed to sit, shut up, and be quiet, and just open my wallet and let moths come out? I mean, what does that mean to get along with people? Apparently it means that I'm not supposed to speak up as someone takes my money. But I'm not going to be quiet. I'm going to speak up because I'm not just going to give away my wealth. I deserve what I've worked for. I deserve to keep what I have, and I am willing to pay fairly for the services in town, but not overpay. So I am asking that we protect the FTR. That's why I'm involved, to be on the commission. And also, the casino money is very important to me. I'm not for gambling, but I'm like, well, I would like it to be for tax relief. Then I find out after the fact that there's this whole type of a plan to go around the FTR, and I was pretty upset, personally very upset about that there was this government process going on that was going to keep it out of the people to vote on where they want the money to be spent. I think it was kind of a trick because I don't ever remember it being spoken about during the whole process of a casino. Not once did I hear it being spoken about. I just assumed, and I guess I was wrong, that it would go into the general fund and be part of the budget process that we're used to. Then I find out that it's not going to be. So I kind of felt like it was underhanded to me. It's very underhanded. It does say in the charter that it doesn't specifically say in that section that all fees and funds and revenue is to go into the general fund, because there was no casino. So to cover the casino, the people that put together the charter, they used miscellaneous was the word, miscellaneous. You have to use the word miscellaneous because you don't know what's going to happen in the future. But I think it covers that, but they're saying it doesn't. So as I find that this casino subcommittee wants to appropriate the money away from the budget process, I also find that that it just has to be the right of the people to vote on this money. So, and lastly, I will, pledge to protect the FTR. I think it's an important tool for the taxpayer, and I pledge to make sure that the funds for the casino, the language is in the charter to make sure that it's in the budget process. And I thank you for your time. Thank you. Excuse me. Yes. I would like to introduce Maggie Odell. She's a friend of mine. She has, I got to know her in the process of getting involved in Tiverton politics, and because of her, I ran for the budget committee, and she's very involved, and she's very knowledgeable, and she knows the charter, and I think she'll do very well, and she's lived in town a long time, Jim and Maggie, and I welcome her to the podium.
Hi. I'm actually one of the few lifelong residents of Tiverton. I've lived here all my life, so I know nothing else, and I'm very passionate about Tiverton, therefore. I agree with everything that's been said. The FTR must stay, but a couple of things really of interest to me is this wanting to get rid of the budget committee. I was formerly on the budget committee, and I remember a time when there was an incident of a $70,000 mistake made by the town council, who had already reviewed the budget. Mr. Bellucci made this mistake on the amount that the trash contract was for. And the town council did not ask any questions why this figure was so high. And it wasn't until the budget committee got to review it that they said, hey, wait a minute here. What is this? And we asked Mr. Bellucci to bring in the figures. And then, of course, he had to say that he was wrong. That's one of the reasons that scares me, that people want to do away with the budget committee and give it to the town council. Not only, Janie, checks and balances, but then the budget committee, that's all they do is the budget, period. Town council has everything. And the town council that's in now has all kinds of extra meetings because they can't even get what they need to do done in 2 meetings a month. You're going to add the budget committee to that? I mean, the budget process to that? I don't think so. That is not going to work. Very, very frightening to me. The other frightening thing to me is this revenues from the casino not going as a revenue. And one of the reasons why is, I'll tell you, in the charter, there's a section 203, and it talks about any major or special appropriation other than those which are part of the annual budget, which this would be, for an amount in excess of $500,000 must be approved by electors at the referendum. If it's under $500,000, The town council can decide, like when they bought the Seaside gas station for $400,000. They had the right to do that because it was under $500,000. Now, if you give them the casino money, what are they going to do? Spend it by $499 each for each thing? I mean, this could go, that's bad. So you've either got to make sure that they don't get to put it outside of the revenues, which would be in the budget. You'd vote on it in the FTR. Or change this section of the charter to reflect something other than what it says now. Those are the two things that are the most important to me. Like I say, I believe everything else that they've said. I agree that this FTR is very much needed. It was very undemocratic where we had the financial town meetings. But the people who want to change to a financial town meeting also want to rely on the town council for the budget. Two very, very, very bad things. And so I don't know if, as this process goes along, they're going to want to really tell you what they're thinking, but if they don't tell you they're for these things, then you know they must be against them. Just beware, is all I'm saying. That's it. I'd like to pass this over to Laura Rahm, who I met a couple of years ago when we were all running, as her husband was running, and nice people, and they're involved in the Republican committee now. I don't know where she is, but anyway, there you go.
Thank you, Maggie. My name is Laura Rahm, and you're not hearing things. You did hear this name at the beginning of this, and Richard is my husband and has been for many, many years. We decided, long time ago, 40 years ago, to raise our children in Portsmouth, due to the school system mainly. We raised 4 kids there. They all graduated from Portsmouth High School, and we decided when our last one was a senior that we wanted to come to Tiverton. We wanted to downsize. We wanted a little bit more land. The taxes were awesome. Portsmouth was really starting to get up there. I'd like to think I had a little tiny bit to do with the Portsmouth school system, as I spent 8 years on the school committee there. My first 2 as chairman. Lovely job. And I spent 8 years as the policy chairperson for the school committee. So we came to Tiverton, and I did not want to get involved in politics at all. I wanted to go to the grocery store and come home with ice cream that was still intact, instead of getting accosted in the store and Clements Market and everything like I had been for 8 years. So we came here and we basically started rescuing dogs. Our 4 kids were off. They were all, graduated from college, all married, and we have 7 grandchildren. We started adopting dogs. We had lots and lots and lots of them over the years, including one from Afghanistan. When my son was over there serving in 2012, he befriended a little puppy, and he said, "Mom," he called me from Afghanistan, very rare call that I got, and said, "We need to bring this dog home." Okay, I can adopt from the Forever Paws in Fall River. How am I going to get a dog out of Afghanistan? Well, anyway, we did it. We raised money and we did it, and we had that dog. We had her for a while until Eric got home, and now he has her, and she's wonderful, and we love her to death. So, why did I get into politics after all this? Or helping Richard out when he decided to run for Senate for his very first race ever, which I thought he was kind of crazy for, but it was a great experience. I did help him. And now, I can't say enough. Everybody has mentioned this about the FTR. The FTR works. It works. And that is the bottom line for this. It gives every single person in Tiverton an opportunity to present a budget, to vote, whatever they want to do for this budget. And I cannot, for the life of me, understand one single reason. I wish somebody would tell me. I haven't been able to find this out yet. Why anybody would want to get rid of the FTR. It makes no sense to me, and I hope someday somebody will call me and say, give me a reason to do this. We probably have about 20% of the tax levy that we have control over after, you pay your bonds and you pay your commitments and obligations and contracts, and there's a lot to be said for that too, but, you know, but basically we have 20% of the budget left. Why would you want to take that away from the voters? I just don't get it. Budget committee, same thing. Like Maggie said, you couldn't have said it any better. Why would you give that to the town council? They can't do what they do now in the time frame that they have. Why would they want to take on this budget? It makes absolutely no sense. The budget committee does a wonderful job. There's 11 members. There's input. There's from the community. There's input from everybody. From other committees. And lastly, the casino money. You know, this is the three big items I think that I really see as an issue. And like Nancy said, and a couple of other people said, when I was helping Rick to campaign, many people, probably hundreds of people, said they wanted the casino for one reason, and not because they were gamblers, not because they wanted any reason other than to lower their taxes. And if they do not get that, it is going to be a criminal in this town not to do what the people voted for. It will be criminal. And so therefore, those are the three issues that I would like to run on. I'm running for the Charter Review Commission, and like to be making sure that this FTR stays in place. Otherwise, now, I don't know, it's a husband and wife team here. I don't know if that's going to be a good thing or not, but we're here and we both, we both agree with this, and that is the big thing. Do not take that FTR away. And I thank you very much.
Hello again. I would like to introduce our next speaker, and I asked if I could do this because make this introduction because it's a very important one to me personally. 2017 we're in. So 9 years ago was 2008, and does anyone remember what happened in 2008? The stolen FTM. Right, the stolen FTM, when the vote failed to spend all the money, they sent everyone home. Said come back in 3 weeks. Then they called everyone back using the school phone system the next week, and they rammed it through. And I think that may have been the 11% increase here. So about a month after that, somebody who a very dear friend who I work closely on these materials with, is in 2008, said, meet me at the Black Goose at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I said, well, I have to go to work. I said, well, you're going to have to meet me at the Black Goose at 8 in the morning because we got to meet this person. So I show up at the Black Goose, and then there's this gentleman named Rob Coulter, and his wife Danielle was there too. And we shared views for about an hour about what had happened in the town. And so from that moment, we developed a very fond working relationship on many of these issues. And Rob served as my vice chair on the budget committee. Rob served on the town council and was one of the 5 votes that decided to put the FTR to ballot back in 2011. And so he's been very, very involved in these various things. And I also want to say that I think Rob is probably the smartest person I've ever met in my life. And I say that sincerely because well, perhaps, one of them. But Rob went to the Naval Academy, and he was an exchange student at West Point, and he was very near the top of his class there. And then he went on to the University of Chicago, and where he got double master's degrees and was number 1 in his class at Chicago, and then decided that wasn't enough. So with the engineering and all that behind him and the business side behind him, he decided to go to law school, and of course he went to Roger Williams over here, and again was number 1 in his class there. So we're quite honored to have someone like Rob help us in these taxpayer initiatives, and he's been very, very engaged, and it's so wonderful to have him involved. So with that introduction, I'd like to introduce Rob Coulter.
Thank you, Jeff. That was most of that he made up, I think. Now, I guess I think the message I would send is that most of the people in the room, me included, you've heard from all walks of life and all occupations, but absolutely nobody in this room ever really thought they would be in this room. Nobody came here to become a politician or get involved. I think that something happened. For me, it was the stolen FTM in 2008. I have lived in Tiverton for 13 years, which I've come to learn is a very small amount of time, although I was in the military and my family before me. So I've lived in Tiverton longer than anywhere else, so I feel like this is home. And my 2-year-old is running around the room. I think he's got his fingers maybe in the dip right now. I don't know if he's supposed to do that, but we do live in a house from the 1700s, so we're over another 100 years. I think we'll be properly called Tivertonians. But I do want to talk about, because it's been 6 years with the Financial Town referendum, and I've been on the town council, I've been on the budget committee, I've been involved in the taxpayer groups. My wife and I founded a charity here in Tiverton, and we're very proud of that. But I can't stress how important this Charter Review Commission is because of the Financial Town referendum. And for those of you, I think you see this chart, you can see in some ways, because we have bended the curve now, and we are under inflation, we're still higher than all other towns in Newport County and those that surround us. But the taxes still are very, very high compared to our neighbors, and that really does hurt our businesses, it hurts our real estate values. But it's much better than it used to be back when we were in that gymnasium on a Saturday for 3 or 4 hours. Well, if there was no contest, they couldn't get enough people, and they'd call people up and say we don't have enough people. And then when there was a contest, there'd be so many people they couldn't fit them all in the room, and they'd extend it from Saturday to Saturday, sitting on the bleachers. The yeses and the nos didn't add up to the total count. You never really knew are these people from Tiverton, So don't let the success of the last 6 years make you sort of acquiesce. We really do have to protect this thing. Financial Town meeting really was very difficult, and so here are the sort of the 3 reasons why I'm such a fan of the Financial Town referendum. And as I think a couple other speakers have said too, there's no doubt about it that the taxpayers have been successful because the curve has been better. But if people want taxes to go up and they use the FTR to do that, that's fine, because it's a secret ballot and there are no surprises, and it allows for the most people to vote as possible. And those are the 3 biggest reasons why we have to protect the Financial Town referendum and all the casino money that goes with it. If you remember from that Financial Town meeting, you wouldn't really know what you're going to vote on. You knew that the budget committee would get the first shot, but there could be 2, 3, 4, 5, who knows. They made up the rules as they went. You had no notice of that. And if you did vote, you were under observation by other people. It was a very intimidating environment. With the FTR, you have a secret ballot. You're in and out of there in a few minutes. You know about a month in advance exactly what you're voting on, and you can do that in minutes. And I would also just like to say, on behalf of people that travel, or perhaps they had a family commitment or whatever, they can't be there for the vote on the Financial Town referendum, or when the Financial Town meeting used to be, then now you have early voting, and now you have absentee ballots. And if you're in the military and you're not home, you now have the chance to come back and participate in that vote in your community. And I think that's a really, really important thing, because one of what's really special, I think, about Tiverton is that you have this direct participation where you get to vote directly on your budget, on your taxes, on where you want that money to go, and that's a special thing. And so I think it's really, really important. You've got 24 candidates running or something. Pay close attention to those that are talking about who's going to protect that direct right to vote. So when you hear people that want to take away the budget committee, that they want to have you get 500 signatures in 2 days, these types of things, they'll say, oh, we just want to make some modifications to the FTR. We're going to keep the FTR. We're just going to make, you just need 10,000 signatures in 1 day, right? I mean, so, I would encourage everybody to think very carefully about what everybody's saying. And I, like many of the other speakers in the room today, certainly have signed up for this job for really the primary reason to protect that financial town referendum. And thank you very much. And now looks like I get to try to turn the tables back on Jeff. I don't know that I can. But what he said was essentially true. I was at the FTM in 2008. It was my first one. I have to confess this. I had lived in Tiverton for 5 years. My wife went to an FTM without me. I was working really late in the year before or 2 years before, and she came back speechless. And I'm like, well, that must have been awesome. This sort of old school colonial, everybody comes together, right? How it works in Vermont, where there's like 20 people that live there perhaps or something. She came back speechless. So I said, I got to go check this out myself. And so I did, and what I saw was sort of the ultimate cage fighting with 1,000 people in the room or something like that. And I saw some friends who are now friends of ours. I didn't know them at the time, but Jeff Karen as well, who really were there, really standing on principle against a lot of pressure to try to do the right thing. And so I wrote a blind letter and said, I don't know who you are, but I really respected what you did up there, and I'd like to meet you. And that's how I've come to know Jeff. And I've had the distinct honor of as the vice chairman of the budget committee with Jeff. So with that said, I'd like to give you back to Jeff Karen.
Hello again. So I looked down at my notes and realized I've been so busy trying to help pull this together that I didn't have a speech prepared for myself. But I said, I got a blank sheet of paper in front of me, and what I've heard here today is a lot of people supporting the FTR, and they want to make sure the casino money goes in the right direction and whatnot. And I looked at my blank sheet of paper again, and I said, it's been awfully quiet from the other side. The other side meaning the people in the town who write these letters that's, along the way for the last year or so, on and off, that we should raise the signature count. Like what we saw last summer. One of the people running for the budget committee now was on the the Charter Review Commission right now, was on the town council last summer and pushed a few proposals through all the way to public hearing, which were able to stopped at midnight, I think on the third night of it, and the clock ran out. But the proposals included raising the signature count on the elector petition to 500, 1,000. It was a big number, and it certainly wasn't a whole lot of time to gather those signatures. And another one was going to limit the amount that one could put on an elector petition. So I think the number was a couple $100,000, the most you could vary. So, it was about 0.25% of a number. So essentially, if the town asked for 4% increase, the petitioner could roughly get it down to 3.8, and that was it. So if the town asked for 4% every year, petitioner comes in, the lowest he can take it because of what would have been a charter change was 3.8%. So those were a couple of things that happened. And there was even another proposal last summer to eliminate the FTR, just a big X through it, eliminate the budget committee, a big X through it, and have the town council do it all. And this is how you have to be careful, because the ballot question that was proposed to go to public hearing last summer said with a backup of a referendum vote by signatures. So we were going to have a backup. But when you looked at the actual language submitted to the public hearing, there was no backup referendum. So that had that gone to ballot and had that passed in November, the town council would be in charge now of everything, and there would be no backup recourse for the taxpayer direct. So That being said, there's an awful lot of silence out there, and the people who are plugged into this hear through the grapevine what maybe this person or that person, and I can't use any names, what their position is. But I hope that everyone, especially everyone out in TV land, pays attention to the positions of all the candidates and runs that to ground to know their positions on these things, because just a little change here and a little change there, and all of a sudden the elector petition's gone. And the elector petition is the thing that keeps the government honest. Okay, it's the ability for everybody to put in that petition, and that's what keeps the government sharp pencil going. So just increase those signatures to a number that's impossible to achieve, and you still got the FTR maybe, but you've neutered it to the point where it's useless. So it's very, very important to nail the people you're going to vote for down. Nail them down on their positions on these things. And if somebody's rather ambiguous, I'll just say, then that's something to be nervous about, because all it takes is a number change here or there in that charter, and it's a completely different world for the town. I also want to point one thing out. These two lines on this chart are a 2% line, and this is a 2.5% line. So starting in 2002, had the tax levy grown at 2.5%, it would be here now, and had it grown at 2%, it would be here. So obviously we're way ahead of that. But the point I want to make is this is the casino revenue. And if all of the casino revenue were used to reduce taxes, it would get us to here. And we're still way, way higher than where we would be. So I just want to make that point. I don't think I heard anyone make that point, and nobody certainly explained what these two lines were. So this is, ballpark cost of living type lines that one would see. It was mentioned earlier about Section 1205 in the charter about the miscellaneous revenue. And yes, the casino revenue is directed to the general fund. And I think that the most important thing there, as we've heard over and over, is that it does stay in the budgetary process so that the people can have a vote on it. With that, I think I'll move on and let the next person come up, because I have many points to make, but many of them have already been said, and I'll keep this moving since it's rather warm. So let's see. I am going to introduce now Mr. Bill Lopes. I'll go back. Actually, this is a great opportunity to introduce Bill, because last summer at those hearings, when the government was putting forth these possibilities to get rid of the FTR, Mr. Lopes was there, and I didn't know who he was, but he was rather diligent in his speaking at the microphone to try to keep the FTR in place. And it was with that I developed a small relationship with Mr. Lopes, and I just think it's absolutely wonderful that he decided to get involved in this Charter Review Commission, since he had that early introduction last summer when the attempted change to the charter happened. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Lopes, and I'd like to thank him again for running.
Well, I'm pretty humbled to be here amongst all these very knowledgeable and experienced speakers. I'm a total greenhorn relative to Tiverton politics, so I will do my best to share with you some of the things that I feel are important and what drove me to join the effort to try and protect the FTR and also the casino revenues. So I promise you, since I know I'm the last speaker and I know I'm between you and the table over there, I will try to be as brief as I can. But I do want to just share a few things with you, a couple of highlights. First of all, my name is Bill Lopes. I have owned property in Tiverton since 1998. I was working at the time, and I was not able to live here on a full-time basis. However, in 2003, I did retire from a very fruitful 37-year career with General Electric Company. I was a technical executive at GE, and I had very extensive experience in managing programs, multi-million-dollar programs, and dealing with schedules and maintaining efficiency in those programs. My education is, I have a couple of master's degrees, one an MBA and the other a mechanical engineering, and I'm grateful that Jeff did not talk about my grades. I have had a very interesting career, and I believe many of the things that I learned in industry are applicable to helping to make a town government work better. So as I said, I am new to Tiverton politics. I really got interested in the work that was being done in the creation of the FTR. And as I mentioned, I moved here in around 2003, and that's right down here. And you know, I had this wild ride along with all of you, in which the taxes doubled over 10 years. And I heard about the FTR. I thought it was a very exciting and game-changing concept. And clearly, the results are shown that this has really made a big difference. And let's face it, it had to. We've got, rather than having a handful of elected officials and people with, invested interest in getting things done, instead you've got 10 or 12,000 people who are taxpayers, who are really the people paying the bills, and they are going to vote for the best solution for our town. So it's just been a wonderful process, and I, like others, want to work very hard to continue that. And it has stabilized our taxes over the last several years. Now we see signs, however, that as we run up to the Charter Commission election, that there are people wanting to change the FTR. And people before me have elaborated on that. I won't bore you with those details. But I do think it's flawed thinking that, and would be a serious mistake for Tiverton's future, if we were to significantly alter the FTR. It, like any process and system, can be improved, but it is pretty darn good, and it has shown it is a very effective tool. When you look at what it has done, I think it provides the townspeople with a very bright future. If we continue to follow this trajectory, it will allow our seniors to basically, on a fixed income, to be able to stay in their homes, be in a more affordable condition. We also need to think, and someone mentioned grandchildren and children, we also need to think about the young. How are they going to stay in this community? A community that they grew up in, that they love, they want to stay here. How are we going to be able to do that unless we have manageable, affordable financial commitments for this town? The FTR is a democratic process. I know a lot of people talk about democracy and whatnot, but it is. All voters in this town have a say. They can control the way in which we spend our money. We're not counting on this small little group of people with these backroom deals trying to manage this. So when you look at it, when people talk about altering the FTR, think about the miserable record that they have, and then think about what FTR has delivered to all of us. let's see, I've got a couple other points I'd like to make here. One is we've got a fork in the road, as we know. People talking about this new chapter in Tiverton's history with the advent of the upcoming Tiverton casino revenue. Now, this is no small deal. This is $4 million, folks. I mean, let's face it, $4 million. We've had, pitched battles fought in this town over a few $100,000. And here we are. We're going to have, on an annual basis, we're going to be getting $4 million. We need to manage that appropriately. We need to make sure it's being handled responsibly. And we want to do that in a way that's fair to everybody. And I know that some of our neighbors and friends have some different opinions of this, but fundamentally, when the casino gaming money comes in, look, we're going to have more than enough money to distribute for schools, for public safety, for debt relief, capital expenditures, and, thank God, tax relief. So we just need to have a process that will be fair to everybody. We don't want to maintain this constant battle going on forever within our town community. Let's try to use the FTR and the casino funds in a responsible and committed way that will allow all of our folks to share in the prosperity going forward. And let's make sure that our seniors, I know many of you are seniors here. I'm a senior, so I feel a part of you, but I can tell you this, that I do see many seniors in my neighborhood who are worried about their ability to stay in their home. They are seeing that even though we have plateaued, we've plateaued at a very high level. And we need tax relief to help bring us back to a point where people on a fixed income can afford to live in the homes that they love and they brought up their families in. It's really that simple. And we need to help the young folks, the two paycheck couples that are working their butts off and trying to be able to maintain a home in a very nice community like Tiverton. So we really want to give all of our kids a chance to enjoy the fruits of this wonderful community that we've all enjoyed. So let's give every Tiverton taxpayer the chance to not only enjoy the community, but have a say in how their money is spent. And let's protect the FTR. It is an invaluable tool, and we need to make sure that the casino revenue, once it starts flowing in, gets included into the FTR so you have a chance. Each and every one of you have a chance to say, yeah, I think maybe a new fire engine's a good idea. Let's do this, or let's buy whatever. So again, I just thank you for your welcoming this afternoon, hosting us, and thanks again for listening to us, and particularly me, who is trying to struggle with all of these great and knowledgeable folks around. Thank you.
Well, that concludes our program for tonight. I just want to take 1 minute to remind the audience and everybody that's viewing this on television that the Charter Review Commission vote is July the 18th. It's a Tuesday. And there will be 5 polling places. I'm just focusing on this map here, which has been on the opposite side of everybody. But I just want to touch on it so everyone knows where to vote. The north end of town, which is essentially north of Route 24, the precincts 3301 and 3302 is going to vote at the VFW. And then we are now in Country View, precinct 3303. So would it be the northeast corner of the town, this area, will be voting here at Country View. And the east part of town, over by Bliss Four Corners, will be voting at Sandywood Farm, which is over by Boogamarsh. And then the Highland Road area, Main Road area, south of Route 24, all the way, it looks like, back to Stafford Road, is going to be voting at the Ranger School, and that would be north of Booger Marsh. And then all of everything that looks like south of Booger Marsh will be voting at the high school. The two precincts, 3306 and 3307, will be voting at the high school. So south of Booger Marsh is at the high school. So I think that's important that we touch on that so we all know what we're doing on Tuesday, July 18th. So again, I thank Country View for hosting us tonight, and thank all the candidates who participated. And I wish everyone have a great 4th of July and a great summer. Thank you.